blessings upon it all. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. And so I wanted to start. I mean, we all, when it comes to our children, we all have a very heavy heart as our district goes through what it's going through now. Um, I would and for those that I see some people on names I don't know, my name is Marcia Ellis. I'm president of the Fort Lauderdale Broward branch of the NAACP. And I have asked Dr. Osgood to come and talk to us because as we have moved since she's been on, and it was really unfair to her, but she became everybody's school board member. And, I would call like others, I'm just as guilty. And it would not be in her district. And, sometimes she might, gently try to nudge me into the school board member that I probably should be talking to, but I'm not always that great at following directions. So I always needed her to help to guide to because I knew we had a partner in caring for our children. And so now it is, and people have said, folk are running for different offices and we're doing that and we're doing that. So, I mean, it's really unfair for people to ask folk to stay on forever, particularly when we ourselves are not willing to make that sacrifice and be in these positions. But I do worry about where our school district is going. I worry about all the children, but certainly Black and brown children, because we have not had the representation that we need. Everything was not fantastic before Dr. Osgood got there. And so we need to know where the district is. And I did not bother her when she was being the chair. And I do believe in, to say, I listen to y'all think I do. I do really believe in divine intervention. I know that it was no error that Dr. Osgood was the chair. Just didn't happen when this thing happened with our superintendent. And we are certainly happy that she was a leader and to make sure that there was a fair and just process that happened with our superintendent. But Doc, we need to know, where do we go from here? Mr. Runcie's tenure will end soon. And there will be an interim, and anything you could share that's going to help us to feel and to understand what's going on in this district would certainly be helpful. I want to get right down to business this evening. So, Dr. Osgood, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President Ellison. And certainly I would be remiss if I didn't pay honor to the Honorable Judge Alana Holmes and Judge Cal Evans, to Mr. Roosevelt Walters, who has been an advocate and leader in our community for years, to Ms. Sonia Burrows, Ms. Jasmine Shirley, Anthony Williams. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart for what the NAACP do. We could not make change in our district for our children, especially children of color, without the collaboration, partnership, and leadership of the Fort Lauderdale Broward branch of the NAACP. It is good when you are making policy that you have advocates that will stand with you, but also will help you get back in line and make sure that you continue to focus on what you need to focus on. So I am eternally grateful for the NAACP and the relationship and the commitment that you guys have given to our children. This weekend is our annual observance of Memorial Day, which commemorates all men and women, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native Americans, and others who have died while serving in the military for this country. So I certainly would like to honor them this afternoon for their service to our nation. And I'm gonna lay the groundwork in this way tonight as I was thinking about our time together. This coming weekend is also another historical milestone and sits in this striking juxtaposition where it's been 100 years since the Tulsa Race Massacre, one of the worst episodes of racial violence in the nation's history. To summarize what happened, an armed white mob attacked Greenwood, a prosperous Black community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, killing as many as 300 people, burned more than 1,250 homes, and erased years of Black success. What was known as Black Wall Street was burned to the ground, literally burned to the ground. And this was also the first time where airplanes was used to attack citizens on domestic soil. And we know the second time was 9/11. The past for us is never very far away from the present. We must acknowledge individually and collectively as a nation that the freedom and liberties of our men and women who have fought and died, for all now, we are still fighting for the same thing. The past year, we have experienced life-altering challenges with the pandemic, yes, and with Broward County Public Schools. But we also continue to feel the impact of this national and global virus called racism that is far more dangerous than any COVID-19 pandemic. Racism is a systemic virus that has maintained and kept a hot fever of hate and discrimination in the body of this nation. And it continues to kill brothers and sisters and push children into jails instead of allowing them to achieve education. We remember George Floyd, Eric Gardner, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Walter Scott, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Breonna Taylor, Dante Wright, Rayshon Brooks, Jacob Blake, and the list just goes on and on. At the very time that America was having this racial reckoning about criminal justice, states and districts were closing in-person schooling in ways that particularly harmed non-white students and will have a long-time consequence on our babies. As a community, we cannot allow our most vulnerable and marginalized students to bear the brunt of this moment in history. We must do whatever it takes to get them back into school and on track. So here's what we're doing in the Broward County school system. We're working very tirelessly to help students recover from learning losses that have occurred during the virtual learning. On June 21st, we are launching the largest in-person academic summer experience we've ever created in 90 locations. It offers our pre-K to 12 students morning and afternoon childcare, academic programs in the morning, and fun and enrichment activities and camps in the afternoon. Breakfast and lunch will also be provided. So if you're a family with multiple kids or living on that tight budget, our summer program can really help you economically if you just get the kids to school. We'll take care of them. We'll give you childcare in the morning, childcare in the afternoon, and we're going to feed them 2 times. The summer experience will take place across 6 weeks, and it's all free, but you do have to register so that the students can be a part of the enrollment. And you would register at Broward Schools website, www.browardschools.com. In the fall, our campuses will open for 100% face-to-face learning. And we must get all of our students back in school. To all of you parents, grandparents, aunties, aunts, mentors, mentees, we must prioritize education now like never before. Just like we have to go to work every day with a headache, not feeling good, we have to hold our students to the same standards, that education becomes a priority, and we help them to understand that it's not optional. We must work with the Department of Health to continue to vaccinate our teachers and our staffs. And we did a lot of that early this year. And now we have put something in place thanks to Dr. Thatchy, who is the director of the health department in Broward County. We've put something in place to vaccinate many of our students. So what I need from the NAACP, and yes, Madam President, I came with an ask tonight. I need you guys to join me in a call to action to get our babies back in school. Many of us allow our children to stay home and miss school. Missing 2-3 days of school is too much for them to miss. We have a generation that is at an all-time high significant risk, and we just can't sit by and watch them fail. I know you're probably saying, I've been working, I've been serving, I've been helping students. Well, brothers and sisters, I need you to level up and I need you to do more. On just about any metric that you can evaluate a school system's performance, we have substantially improved and continue to be recognized nationally for our progress and our innovation. And a lot of that is due to your hard work and the leadership of a person who I believe will go down in history as being one of the greatest superintendents of all time, Mr. Robert Runcie. Our graduation rate, which includes charter schools, is 89.4%. It's the highest since it's been since 2011. Simultaneously, Mr. Runcie has put programs in place to close the graduation gap between the Black and white students. It's gone from about 15% to now 5%. Our reading and math scores have also increased as a part of our effort to close the gap. For the 5th consecutive year, our career and technical school education students ranked #1 in the state for earning the highest number of industry-based certifications. So many of our kids are graduating with certifications in Microsoft Office and all of those different types of programs. And let's not forget the district when we came together, when I first started out in 2012, and we repurposed Arthur Ashe with your support. So today, Arthur Ashe is serving people by providing technical training and quick launch careers in healthcare and technology. And Arthur Ashe is located in my hometown, the 33311 community. The district is named again the District of the Year by Cambridge International for the 2nd time in 4 years. And this is unprecedented to get this type of international recognition for student achievement, equity, and access to high quality learning opportunities. Our school district is a national leader in computer science, and we were the first district in the nation to partner with Code.org through a relationship that Mr. Runcie had. We provided all of our students an opportunity to have access to Wi-Fi and the internet. Then we gave out about 50,000 elementary school devices, somewhere over 100,000 altogether. A couple of years ago, Code.org and the College Board said that Broward schools had more Black students taking advanced placement courses in computer science and sitting for the exam than the rest of the state combined. These are the things that you don't hear often about the school board. We have many of our students who are doing really, really well. Broward Schools has the largest speech and debate program in the nation. And it's available in all of our schools. All of our students across Broward County have an opportunity to participate in debate. And my babies from Walker oftentimes show up and we're in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place. The superintendent recently secured a life-changing learning opportunity for students in our Title I high schools who are now receiving free access to Yale University's Psychology and Global Life through a college course, through a partnership between Broward Schools and the National Education Equity Lab. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we became the lifeline for our community. And we met the challenge. We all know that school districts have to do more than just educate students. During COVID-19, I think we've given out somewhere about 16 million free meals to students and their families. We distributed, as I said earlier, about 130,000 laptops, another 6,000 some odd iPads, and about 3,000 hotspots, because you know in certain neighborhoods, the Wi-Fi doesn't work like it should work. And this was one of our district's most successful responses during the pandemic. And we actually became a model for other districts across the nation. And I take the time tonight to talk about these accomplishments, because even in the pandemic, we can celebrate the success of our students and the hard work of all the staff that work in Broward County schools. Our cafeteria workers never stop working. They continue to give out food. Our bus drivers, our janitors who were on overload, cleaning, in a way that they had never had to clean before. Our teachers who pivoted to e-learning and took on the new challenges of educating our students in a different way. And our school board, who had to stand many times against the state, who wanted kids to go back to school face-to-face, mask policies. We were the first school district to close and the last school district to open. And we made a decision to pay everybody during that time because we continued to prioritize people. And we know that our staff needed their money and that it was no fault of theirs that we were experiencing a pandemic. I want to take a moment again to, in case some people are just getting on, to recognize the important role that the NAACP and our local president, Marsha Ellison, has played in eliminating the schoolhouse to jailhouse pipeline. And this is major for Broward County and for our students. The major racial disparities in student discipline rates have been documented for decades, but nobody would release the data. Mr. Runcie released the data. And in 2013 to 2014, the National Civil Rights Data Collection Project documented that Black students who make up 16% of the enrollment accounted for 40% of suspensions nationally. So it's no doubt that racial discrimination in school discipline, it is a real problem. And although we've made a lot of strides, it is still a problem today. However, everybody was sitting around and not doing anything about this. Our kids were being arrested for petty stuff, petty acts, a lot of times for things that judges would release them to their parents, and then they would be on the streets and out of school. But the NAACP stepped in and they helped to create the Promise program, which is a positive intervention program for nonviolent, I'm gonna say that again, a positive intervention program. There's a lot of confusion about this Promise program. A positive intervention program for nonviolent minor misdemeanor offenses. It is a mandatory alternative to external suspension program that provides counseling and wraparound services for our students. Prior to Promise, students were being expelled externally, and they would be sitting home and missing school and getting, marked up for lack of attendance on the streets, getting into trouble, doing what kids do when they're suspended externally for 5, 10, 15 days for petty misdemeanors. And I think if we all search our souls and our hearts, we can't argue that our kids being in school is always better than them being at home. And these kids are not criminals. I get very aggravated when I hear people talk about my babies and call them criminals because they make a mistake. They, get caught with a minor joint or something like that. So Promise was our solution, and Promise has done well. Only about 3% of the more than 50 suspensions annually. We still have suspensions of students because some things they do, sometimes we can't keep them in school. But things like fighting with no entries, drugs and alcohol use, those are the most common offenses. Weapons are actually felony offenses and they're not eligible for promise. So we hear all this stuff about kids going to promise and they should be in jail, they felons. It is just literally not true. And we have to make sure that we don't allow our community to become a community that promotes the fake news that we hear on TV all the time, or in some people's newspapers articles. On May 3rd, the New York Times issued something following a story which really caught my attention. Why the right loves public school culture wars. This article had a quote by a political strategist on how the white intends to build political power. He said, I would rather have 1,000 school board members than one president and no school board members, said the former leader of the Christian Coalition. The article went on to describe how school board elections are a great training ground for national activism. They can pull parents, particularly mothers, into politics around intensely emotional issues, building a thriving grassroots and keeping it mobilized. So now, Madam President, you understand why we always have that target on our back, and I need you standing with me fighting. We're now seeing the emerging of the next biggest fight in our public schools, this whole notion of the critical race theory. Some people think that we shouldn't talk about the critical race theory in public schools, a theory that argues and has been proven that racism is not something that somebody is born with, that racism is created and taught through social systemic cultures where things are stacked against one group, and that group is the group that looks like us. The early battles in public school were initially about race, particularly segregation and busing. Now with the drive to eradicate the teaching of the critical race theory, race has been moved back into the center of a public school culture war. And this is not just something that I'm exaggerating about. This is something that's very, very serious that we can't let creep up on us. We have to pay attention to it. On June 10th, the Florida Board of Education will meet to address the critical race theory. They'll begin taking action, said Governor DeSantis, in addressing the critical race theory. I say to myself, Judge Holmes, how can Governor DeSantis address the critical race theory? I mean, normally, if you're brilliant and smart, you seek out some expertise to help you solve a problem. And if you're not talking to people that look like us, that have been hurt and continue to be hurt by racism, continue to be deprived of our rights, continue to be forced to live into communities that other people wouldn't live in, and I could just go on and on. How do you address the critical race theory and you never talk to the individuals that are victimized about it? It was so interesting to me, Judge Evans, that the Asians were able to get a resolution and policy passed about Asian hate, when racism and the brutality on Black people has never received that type of, you can still lynch, and there's no tough public policy around it. And I think it's important that we understand these things because these things impact our children in a lot of systemic ways. It takes away their self-esteem. Nobody wants you coming for them. And when you understand that a system coming for you, what you're gonna do is you're gonna fight back. So in Broward County, we have been working, doing courageous conversations, working on these issues of racism, using nice words like equity. Last year, we began to talk about becoming an anti-racist district. And yeah, it put an even greater target on our back. And that's why some of us have decided that since we get all the policies from the state that continue to perpetuate a lot of this systemic racism, we need to take the fight to the state level so we can be at the seat and at the table when they think they're gonna address the critical race theory without us having something to say about it. But you'll have to invite me back for another time about that, Madam President. I have a whole lot to say about that, and you'll be hearing it sooner than later. So we need your help to fight against those who literally want to destroy and burn down our district to achieve their own agendas. What they did in Tulsa was a massacre outright, where they shot up and killed a whole bunch of people. But what they're doing every day is they're killing us softly with legislation like HB 1, SB 90, all of those things that are pushing us back instead of pushing us forward. And those of you who are not elected officials, you can no longer sit on the sideline and not understand the punitive punishment that comes through a lot of legislation that's put into place by people that many of you vote for. Everybody that look like us don't vote with us, don't vote with our best interest. That's why you don't see them until it comes election time, and then they want to show up and talk to you and tell you what they're gonna do. But you have to start checking the records. Just like Marsha will call me and say, they don't need to be doing that. You know, we need to be over here. You have to hold elected officials accountable because it's you that's put us in office. So I need the NAACP now more than ever before. I may be moving from one seat to the other, but my passion for my community and my love for my kids is something that'll be with me as long as I got breath in this body, as long as I can open up this big mouth. And if something happened where I can't open up my big mouth, Judge Holmes, you know, we know a God, he'll let me learn sign language where I can still move and get done what I need to get done. But we have to call it what it is. Our fight today, brothers and sisters, is racism. And if we're not careful, all of these things will slip in through the school system, where the dollars will continue to go to private schools, continue to go to charter schools. And I'm for charter schools that work. We just need to find funding, as we're funding other schools, to give the resources to our public school system so that our teachers are not having to buy supplies out of their pocket, so that our children have what they need. And we need to make a push to pay people that are working in low performing schools more, because they're doing 2 and 3 times the work of individuals working in other schools. So I know that as we move forward, we're going to do a whole lot more marching. We have HB 1, but we can still march, you know, and still protest and still take a stand for our children. So I'm going to ask you again, if you're connected to any young people in any way, any school-age child, summer school is not just for kids that are behind. We want all kids that can to be in summer school. They lost over a year with COVID. We want them back in an environment where they can learn, where they can have fun, where they can build their social relationships and interpersonal skills. And we are prepared to receive them from you this summer. We'll teach them in the morning. We'll send them to camp and allow them to have some fun as well. We'll have before and after school care. So if you're working, you don't have to worry about it. And it's all free. And in closing, thank you to the city of Fort Lauderdale, Broward County government, the city of Lauderhill, and many of the municipalities who are partnering with the school district this summer, the Children's Service Council, to make sure that this summer is a summer of learning and fun for our students. And we're asking you to please stand with us. Let's go back to prioritizing our babies, where school is not optional. I have to go to work. I tell my kids I have to go to work every day. You have to go to school every day. Let's get them what they need. Many parents complain about computers. Well, if I don't spend the $125 for my weed 2 or 3 times, I'll have my computer. If I don't buy the LeBron James and the Dwayne Wade's for 3 kids, I have a real nice computer. So it's all about us prioritizing and making the sacrifices that we need to make so that our children can have a better future. The school board is in the process of appointing an interim superintendent. We're looking from within to appoint that person. We have an outstanding cabinet, and we want them to continue to do the great work that they've done. Mr. Runcie has done a very good job training them and allowing them to lead in their spaces, and we plan to continue that. We will also launch a national search for a new school superintendent. 6 of the largest school districts in the nation are without school superintendents. Houston, Texas has been without a school superintendent for the last 2 years. So as the school board go through that process, it's going to be imperative that you continue to show up at school board meetings, that you pay attention to what's going on in the schools. It's not a time, because the district is in transition, that we just accept less for our kids and we don't demand the same educational opportunities and safe and clean learning environments for our kids. It's going to take us as a community to continue to do what we do. You know, I live by this acronym CHANGE. Children have a need to grow every day. And brothers and sisters, it's up to me and you to create those opportunities for our children to grow every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Osgood. We appreciate you. I'm real worried about your leaving. I know I'm being selfish, but I am, because I know they've tried to intimidate you. They've said that you're racist. They said a lot of stuff, but you still stayed the course. I'll have the first question. Is there any chance that you believe, if you remember before Mr. Runcie, they had the little guy who stood in for the interim there, and then they decided he was doing such a good job that they would call off the national, or not do a national search, and then just let that little guy there continue on, and that was a disaster. So is it a done deal that there will be a national search for our next superintendent of schools?
So, Madam President, the way that the school district is moving now, the person that's the interim is not going to be able to apply for the permanent job as superintendent.
Okay.
So we are working, we want to go through a process where we have community input. We're gonna move expeditiously, but we're also gonna take our time to make sure that we use the adaptive problem-solving model, where it's not just the school board members making the decision. We want to hear from the partners in our community, we want to hear from our parents, from our students. So we're gonna go through those processes to do that. And it's gonna be a time that the community needs to show up and participate and make our voices and our desires heard.
And what will happen with redistricting, Doc? I know that the current setup, or the last setup I knew, was Roosevelt Walters and I served, and some others. So how will the appointments work now? Is there a new system in place?
So the school district has not discussed that, but when you look at a lot of the models that are going around, it's something that the county did, where they're allowing educational institutions to help with that, to try to get out some of the political biases with it. We have not made a decision on our school board. It's something that we will be addressing hopefully over the next 4 or 5 months, to try to find a way to do that where it's not a process that you have a certain community or representation from a certain area showing up and dominating those meetings. But whatever we do, if we go with an educational institution, all of it has to be vetted through the community.
And let me just say this, since we're talking about redistricting, and there is a lie that's going around that says Dr. Rosalind Osgood cut Pompano out of her district, Ely out, and they just, all that kind of foolishness. Roosevelt is on the phone as well, and he will, on this call, and he will be able to share with you that it was not Dr. Osgood's decision to cut Pompano out. It wasn't her decision to put all the black schools and create this gerrymandered district so that we'd only have one district in the first place. The idea was so we wouldn't have all of our predominantly black schools packed into one district, and so we would really only have influence on the one school board, which didn't work out for us with the previous guy. And so it was not a Dr. Osgood thing. That's a lie. So let the people in Pompano know, and I've been telling them as well, that is incorrect. She had nothing to do with Pompano being pulled out of the district, and because she didn't like him, didn't want him. That was just, sometimes you can't tell them nothing, but those are the facts. And we worked for over a year In that process, we were all part of that redistricting committee. We went all around Broward County. I think the people of Pompano showed up to one meeting, which is either the last or the next to last. About 6 people came up way after the process was, we were already almost near the end to complain about something that had not happened, and with no map was just a lot of misinformation, which resulted in a lot of lies. And I had, I didn't realize that that was an issue until I was speaking to one of our elected officials, and she said that's what the people of the Pompano say. I said, well, that's a lie. So I just want to clear that up right now. It is, there ain't nothing else to be said. You can say false fact. That's just a straight lie. That did not happen. Doc, I wanted to just a couple things. I want to be clear. So you talked about the children having Black and brown children in particular having access and using our honors, our IB or honors program and dual enrollment. And I want to say that before Mr. Runcie's arrival and implementation of his planning and process, Broward was under the microscope. This office was contacted by the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice to ask what the issue was and why particularly Black children were not enrolling in dual enrollment or IB programs or honors program. That was an issue that was highlighted prior to Mr. Runcie getting here. And once he found out about it, we went from worst to best. So when we talk about Mr. Runcie and the racism, that's what it was with these people, straight racism. And it was, y'all's governor allowing, one segment of the community to decide what was what. But I digress. Racism.
Madam President, you're absolutely right. Broward now has more minority students in AP and honor courses than ever before. We added a high-performing high school under Mr. Runcie's leadership when we went through that repurposing at Lauderhill. Lauderhill 6 through 12 has a high-performing high school where they continue to have 100% graduation. All of the students only take AP and honors courses at that school. 100% of them go to college or technical school if they choose to. So a lot of our students, when they graduate high school in Broward County, they have credits also for their associate's degree. The dual enrollment has worked very good for a lot of our kids. And what's often not said is we're funded for a K through 12. So the board with Mr. Runcie has found a way, because we have to pay for those dual enrollment classes that the students take. You heard me say earlier that we got the Cambridge Award for the second time in 4 years. If a student enrolls in a Cambridge program and they graduate with a Cambridge certificate, they automatically qualify for Bright Futures, regardless of what their SAT or ACT score is. So that's another way that we've been able to get students into 4-year colleges and fund it, because many of our students go to school for the first 2 years and then they just don't have the money or the resources to continue. What was interesting in the state legislature this year is there was a massive push to stop funding Bright Future with the lottery money and fund it through the general fund. What's the difference? If you put it in the general fund's budget is limited. So a student can get Bright Future and be in school for 2 years, and they say the money ran out and now the student is stuck. It had previously been funded through the lottery because those dollars continue to come in. So that's what I meant earlier when I said we have to pay attention to this punitive public policy that takes place in the state level. So I'm planning to be on the state level so you'll get even more information and know what's going on so we can have a louder voice and uncover a lot of this stuff that just kind of slides through bills. We have some great state legislators that do a great job, but I don't know. I know, Judge Holmes and Sonia probably agree with me. I find it offensive that it's only one Black woman in the Senate, in the whole state of Florida. That just doesn't make any sense. And Judge Holmes, she's your Delta sister, but she needs some help up there. You know, it's just, there was a time when you had your Frederica Wilsons, your Athena Joyner, you had Geraldine Thompson, you had a group of women who were connected either to Alpha Kappa Alpha or Delta Sigma Theta. And I'm not throwing any shade against the others because all the Panhellenic do a great job. I'm just talking about history and facts that were getting a lot of stuff done in the Florida Senate, how we got the Florida Kids Care and a lot of the other significant policy changes that happened for our students. I love my brothers. They do a great job, but we know that when women are in public policy, in public office, we stand up for those things that are near and dear to our kids and to our communities because it's what we're living every day.
And so we know that Promise is working, Doc. We know that you have been with us since its inception. What must we do to make sure that Promise lives as we wait, for you to move on to your next office? And what must we do as we look for your replacement in that candidate? Because if we can't go back to everything being fantastic when it is not, we must have a fighter on there who is gonna be able to stand up to the scrutiny and to the criticism from the other communities. So what can we do, and where are we now as we sit, and then what can we do post Dr. Osgood?
I think that with the help of the NAACP and attorneys like Gordon Weeks, I think that people are beginning to understand, first of all, that Promise is not a diversion program, that it's an alternative to external suspension program. And the community has to make sure that whoever the next school board member is, the first thing that they have to understand is that they can't do it all on their own. They're gonna have to listen at people that's been around, partnering with the school district, listen at groups like the NAACP, other groups in the community that have the history that can stand with them. It's not a one man or one woman show, or you'll just conclude that it's fantastic, and it's far away from being fantastic. So it's gonna be very important that that person understands community, listens to community, is able to build relationships with community, and have community work with them. They're also going to have to make sure that they read and they understand, and they're not afraid to stand up for Black people. It really just, I don't know, it just kind of tickles me sometimes when I get all those digs about talking about Black children or standing up for Black people. I've been Black all my life. I was born Black, I'm gonna die Black. That's who I am, that's who I represent. I care about all the students. Most of my schools are populated with predominantly minority children. Another thing that our community is going to have to level up with, and that's finding a way to better love and support our LGBTQI children. I know we have different preferences, and many of us believe in God, we go to church, but the God that, as I know God, love is inclusive of everybody. Children are children, no matter what their sexual orientation is. And many of our children of color that are transgender, that are of the LGBTQ community, they don't have anybody standing with them. That's something that we really got to change in our community. Whatever your morality is, it has to be to love people, whether they're homeless, whether they have a different sexual orientation. We cannot just continue to sit by and allow that community of students to suffer, many of them trying to commit suicide. They just really need us to level up in our love and support of them. So when we're talking about school board and school board members, we have to get somebody that understands that our children, all children are a priority, and they have to be willing to take some hits and stand up and fight and make sure that all of our students have the support and love that they need to achieve academically.
I had a conversation earlier with Attorney Gordon Weeks regarding services. And so we certainly know that some years ago, Mr. Runcie commissioned a study on students with disabilities. And I remember the outrage that how dare he bring this, this shame and this blackout to the district. And he said, we've got too many children with disabilities that need services, and the district ought to be able to do something. And so he moved to bring those services to our children so that all of them wouldn't end up in the judge's chambers and all the judge's courtroom or in front of Mr. Weeks' office trying to help it. I wonder and I worry what will happen with those resources that were prioritized under Mr. Runcie's watch to make sure that all of so many children and many of them do look like me as we work, and I work with people all the time. Like I talk about Gordon all the time as well, because we work together all the time. And many of the students that come through our office and working with the programs that I work with Mr. Weeks are children who have disabilities or who are in need of services. And sometimes I know we ask a lot from the district. I know we need a lot, but sometimes in most cases, the district is all we have. And so I wondered, do you feel like those, what can we do to make sure that both the interim and this new person before he or she is hired, it has children with disabilities as a priority along with our LGBTQ students?
Madam President, I think that we need to have a list of priorities. We need to meet and discuss what that list of priorities is going to be. And we need to effectively communicate that to those individuals as they're coming for screenings, as they're interviewing. Because when we think about how drugs is just dumped into our communities, I just don't believe that our people have the resources to be bringing drugs over on planes and boats, and they end up in our community. So you have this drug epidemic that has plagued our community for decades. And we never talk about how that really impacts a kid. And I'm talking as a person, December 2nd, I'll be in recovery for 32 years. But our kids are impacted just as the parents are. And what normally happens is when there's a substance abuse issue, the person that's abusing the substance may, do like me, have the grace of going to somewhere like BARC and years of counseling and recovering physically, mentally, and spiritually. But the family who has also been impacted by it never recovers. Those individuals never go to counseling. They never get what they need. When babies are born and mothers and fathers have had exposure to drugs, we don't do anything around neuroscience to really understand how it impacts their brains, how it messes with the neutrons in their brains. And we just see our kids and we just say that they can't do this or they can't do that. And then we start to just put them in situations where we expect less. We have to find a way to meet our students wherever they are and help them get to where they need to be. I actually think that there's a national problem with the way that education is structured. I think if we look at grouping our students by levels instead of by age, I think that it would allow educators to work with them in a more effective way because you can meet them where they are. Now, if you're in a classroom, you have students that can be at all different levels. And if you're an educator who's being evaluated and your evaluation is tied to how many students are on grade level, you're going to work with those kids who are going to help you meet that mark for your highest evaluation. And then those kids that are really struggling, you just really don't have the time to work with them. So I think that we have to make that list of priorities and we have to articulate those priorities. I also think that we need to start pulling in our institutions. We have a lot of academic institutions like FAU, FIU. We have Greg Hill that's over Broward University now. We need to have them start doing research and analysis and coming up with data and evidence that gives a real picture of what's going on in Broward schools. Because if we can really identify the needs and the issues, then I have a lot of faith in my community. I think, we're some of the smartest, most brilliant people in the world. We can begin to address those issues. Also, we're going to have to be really serious and work with groups like the NAACP and other groups that got long reach and keep people like Judge Holmes and Judge Williams and Judge Odoms around and Attorney Weeks so we can sue some people when we need to sue them. The late George Allen the school district. That's how they were segregated. And a lot of times we don't take it to a legal place with these systemic systems of racism where we start getting cases and case law. I was on the Juvenile Justice Board meeting with you guys the last meeting. And Judge Holmes was just going through case law, case law, case law, case law. We need to start creating some of that case law where we can then hold people accountable when they're mistreating our students.
Okay. And I want to, speaking of holding accountable, I want to hear from Mr. Weeks. Share with Dr. Osgood the importance of the services that children receive that hopefully before they get to your office, and how you can utilize that to help them, if at all.
Thank you so kindly, Madam President, and thank you for all the work that you're doing, Dr. Osgood. One of the things that we oftentimes see that is so very troubling is that children and families have been struggling with mental illness for years. The criminal justice system is oftentimes the last step in the process when all other systems have failed. Children that have been, identified as in need of services. But what I have seen, what we have all seen, is that there is an incredible toll, an incredible obstacle that's placed in front of families that are trying to access those services. There are parents all across this county, children all across this county that are in need. And, trying to get access to the services to help that child is oftentimes very difficult. And when that system breaks, when a child does not get the services that they need, we oftentimes find that the actions will manifest themselves, and then they find themselves in the juvenile justice system or the criminal justice system. And then we are left to try to put the pieces together of all of the hurt and the toil in this community. So we have to, and I commend Dr. Osgood for speaking very, very plainly and very clearly about the need for the support in the school system. The school system has an incredible amount of resources, but the school system can't do it alone. We need the community to also recognize that there are resources through the Department of Children and Family Services, the Agency of Healthcare Administration, a number of BBHC, and Children's Services Council that have significant amount of dollars that need to be poured back in this community, particularly to help our children that are suffering with mental illness and our families that are struggling to try to get them access to those services. I'm going to make it very clear to a lot of folks. If you have insurance, navigating that system is oftentimes a little bit more easy. You're going to have the roadblocks of insurance that will give you a set amount of hours to meet with the therapist or access to residential placement. But if you don't have that, and a number of our children, our families don't have that, they have to then rely on the system to help navigate. And I'm going to tell you, it is a very, very daunting process. It becomes very frustrating for the families, and oftentimes it's designed to frustrate and diminish the will of the parents and the families, so they give up and then are left to the toils of a child that's suffering with illness and not being treated. So thank you for what you're doing, Dr. Osgood. Thank you, Madam President, for having this conversation. And thank you for continuing to put the light and the pressure on this issue continually.
That's why it's so important that we expand Medicaid. When you think about it, why is it that the 6 or 7 states in the South have not expanded Medicaid? Our dilemma is we're in a major health crisis. Everything that's going on, from violence to education, it's a health crisis. Health is mind, body, and spirit. We see it under attack. You don't have the physical health, access to physical health, mental health. Now you even see our churches being drawn into the loop with different things about the churches. If you don't have insurance, you don't have the money. Our community don't have the money to pay $100 an hour, $80 an hour, $90 an hour for mental health. And even though we have a lot of people of color that work in the mental health space, they need to be paid to sustain their services. The district now, we just put social workers in all of our schools. We were able to get some mental health dollars as a result of what happened with the Stoneman Douglas massacre. So we began to put those dollars, in place in our schools to get psychologists and psychiatrists, but we can't find enough people to fill the positions. As a community, we have to stop this stigma about mental health so that we can get our children the help that they need. If you identify a problem, there's a solution for the problem. We can't just continue to allow our kids to suffer because we worried about how it's gonna make the family look, or who we are amongst who's, and our children are struggling and they end up in Gordon's office or in Judge Williams' court because we haven't addressed a mental health issue that they have, and we never take the time to see what's going on. I find it very interesting. I probably should have majored in something other than public administration, but I find it very interesting that most of us will now go to the doctor and we'll get some type of physical. We'll get our blood checked. Those of us that are female, we get some other things checked. But there is nothing in place in the system to check our brain. You only get your brain checked if you're having an aneurysm or a stroke, when literally there's this neuroscientist by the name of Matthew Lieberman. I read a lot of his stuff because I spend a lot of time alone, and he writes a lot of stuff about people like me that spend so much time alone, and how it literally causes things to start misfunctioning in your brain. But there's nothing that we do to literally look at these children and have them diagnosed. And sometimes we're expecting things from them that their brain function is off, they just can't do. And there are ways through medicine, through therapy, and I'm a believer in prayer. I believe that God has a supernatural power to fix things in our lives, whether he do it miraculously or through medicine. But we don't even know what to ask him for because we don't acknowledge that this mental health thing is so serious and so real.
One of the things we are concerned about also, and you can put questions in the chat, if you can go ahead and do it, or in the Q&A, that would be fine, we'll acknowledge, is the school-based arrests. We know that after the Douglas shooting that the arrest went up. However, we're still looking at that now because it's been a minute now. But when we look, there's still certain schools. It's still Black children, and it's still mostly Black boys, followed by Black girls, followed by Hispanic boys, followed by Hispanic girls. And so we want to make sure, and since we're talking about health, mental health. We were at a meeting with Fort Lauderdale PD yesterday, and we started talking about how mental health should be prioritized. And there is a interim chief there who is just, they told him to just keep it in the road. Don't set the place on fire and roll off. He's just keeping it in the road. But we talked about the prioritizing, and those of you who've been around for a while remember that there was a time, it's been a while, when City of Fort Lauderdale Police Department led the nation in CIT. They traveled and trained other departments. Well, those days are days gone by. And I see Nina Justice on. I want her to talk about, and she did the SRO for a while at the end of her career with Fort Lauderdale. The importance of having, since they must have SROs, if it was up to me, they would not. But if they must have SROs, the importance, Doc, of making sure that they are trained in CIT, crisis intervention training. Nina, can you hear me? Go ahead, Doc, while we get her straightened out.
Yeah, I think that it is important. And I think that law enforcement, they have defined in lines. A SRO, a school resource officer, is very different from a street cop. And I think that we have to make sure that individuals that take the job as school resource officers work like people like Nina that work with the kids, where she had relationships, they loved her. They saw her as somebody that was there to protect them and serve them, not somebody that they were afraid of. The problem that we're having now with kids being arrested in school is all of these policies that have come into play because of social media. If you make a threat, I don't know about y'all, but, in my hood, we tell somebody, I'm gonna get you out of school, And, you know, we get off the bus and we roll around the dirt a little bit and go home. We might come back the next day and do the same thing. But today, if you texting somebody and putting it on Instagram, you're going to get somebody. It's a threat. It's heightened. It becomes this major issue. So we're going to have to continue to do a better job about talking to our students about appropriate and inappropriate uses of social media according to the law. Because some things that are in law, if they do it in school, like if a child brings a gun to school, it's nothing we can do to stop them from being arrested. Even if they didn't have any intent of shooting somebody, they just picked their daddy or mama's gun up off the dresser and put it in their book bag and forgot to take it out. Because of the laws that are in place, it's nothing you can do about it. So as we look at some of these issues, we have to take ownership of some parts of it as a community, but we still have to continue to push school districts and municipalities, because schools, the law enforcement officers come from the municipalities, are from the county. And we have to continue to push those leaders, those chiefs, those city managers to help them understand that if a SRO is in a school, it's very different from them being a street cop. And I saw Nina come on, so I'm going to digress so that she can speak from her expertise.
Okay, Nina,
Okay,
go ahead.
yes, Madam President, I'm sorry, I missed the question.
The question is, I wanted you to talk a little bit. We've been talking about the need for mental health, and we want to talk about the importance of having the right, if you must have an SRO in the school, having the right officer, and the importance of them being a CIT trained, crisis intervention trained.
Correct.
So if you'll speak to that.
Okay, so in the city of Fort Lauderdale, and in most Broward County schools, the principal can have input as to her school resource officer. Now, I was CIT trained, and then she or he can request that they become CIT trained, because it's so important. That's an important aspect. Now, we do have a 40-hour over the summer where we go to training, and they give us something equivalent to the CIT, but you don't want just that. You also want the entire 40-hour CIT training, plus over the summertime, we get additional training. So the principals can request those things from each agency and say that, you know, if we're gonna allow these school resource officers in our schools, these are some of the qualifications that we expect. And then if they don't have them, we would like to have a time frame when they will receive those trainings and to better deal with our kids.
Is there any specified SRO training like there used to be years ago, and it's been a while? You had to have, they'd have an SRO training specifically for dealing with children. And then, you know, shortly after you would become an SRO, then you'd get the training, then come back. So, you know, dealing with children is not the same thing as dealing with bad guys on the street.
Absolutely. And that's the training that I was telling you about, that we normally have our 40-hour training. So we go away over the summertime, and you have to be SRO certified. So they offer it at the college, the Criminal Justice Institute locally, if we don't take it over the summer, but over the summer they offer it as well. And those certifications, you go through rigorous training, you have to pass the testing, and it's very accountable as far as covering these various topics that we've been talking about. But again, if these principals don't know this and they don't request it, police departments will send you a school resource officer without that training. So, you know, I advocate all the time for our department to make sure that the SROs went through that training. But, you know, I think it need to be countywide because it plays an important part.
Thank you. I think that's a big piece. That is absolutely a big piece, because I know that the one thing that the SROs don't want is for a call to go to their, you know, the principal, their city manager, whomever, the chief, saying that they're not functioning in the way that they would need to be. But the police department has to take accountability. And I must say that it has, under this, since Adderley left in particular, a lot of the accountability in Fort Lauderdale has gone. to be
And,
perfectly
and
honest.
that's something that the school board can recommend, in my opinion, like at the level where Dr. Osgood is, you know, because if you don't tell the police departments, they are going to give you what is convenient for them. And we don't want that in our schools, because it takes a special type of person to deal with our children and don't have the mentality of arrest first, which a lot of people do. And so, you know, requesting that, and then also giving a certain timeline, because the school board pays the cities, you know, a certain amount of money in order to have an SRO. So you can put in those contracts at the end of the year or before school starts. You know, these are two entities that I'm requesting that any school resource officer comes to the school, and they have to have these qualifications. Now, when you hire an off-duty officer, which, you know, since every city don't have school resource officers in their schools, now that's a different entity. But when you are assigned to a school 5 days a week, you need to have both of those certifications. And one is the CIT 40-hour training, and the second one is the SRO, also 40-hour block training, in my opinion.
Thank you, Nina. Doc, I didn't realize that we could do that. So since you everybody's school board, we want to make sure that now that we request that, and I will help you with that, or I'll assist, since particularly since the sheriff's office has the most of our schools, that'd be a good place to start. And if the class is taught over the summer, there's a good opportunity to make sure that happens. I mean, we have, I did get a call on yesterday regarding the student who was bullied. We spoke about you talked about the children from all communities being able to be safe. And the first thing I said to that person was, did you call your school board member? Because that lady ran.
Call me.
That lady ran, and y'all said y'all wanted her, and she made promises. And did y'all call Nora Rupert to help protect this child? Like, who did you call besides each other?
Yeah, so I'm in Aruba right now, but I did get that call as I was boarding the airplane to Aruba this morning. And I spoke with Mr. Runcie, who has gotten involved in that situation. I missed his call this afternoon with the update for that. But I forgot to make a point earlier. Y'all know I struggled a lot in school, but once I learned how to read, I read a lot. And I'm not remembering the exact name of the article that I was reading a couple of weeks ago. And it really said something that began to make me think very differently. And this is an area, Madam President, that I'm hoping you can get some of your people on. We have to start looking at this standardized testing. When we think about it, we have standardized testing. Maybe our focus should be on standardized educational systems, not standardized testing. Because those standardized testings is what create these different gaps. We talk about the disparity gaps. So if we stop standardizing the tests and start standardizing the educational system, where kids across the system got the help that they need, not what's equal. Some kids, like me when I was in school, I needed more. So I just think we complain about this high stakes testing and the standardized testing, but I don't think that we've dug our teeth into that to understand, we'll say, well, we know it's so somebody's cousin who creating the test could make money. But I just begin to think about when I came to the district, we were doing FCAT. Then we went to FCAT 2.0. Now we're doing, the Florida standards, but we keep changing these different standardized tests instead of standardizing the educational system itself. So as we look to continue to level up, I think we're going to have to take some time and understand that so we can begin to attack that whole system of these standardized tests. Because if we standardize educational systems, then we would have this whole notion of intellectual openness for all of our students, regardless of their differences. And I just think that's something we have not delved enough into to really, really be able to combat and shut it down and speak truth to power about why it doesn't work. It's not that it don't work because our kids are not smart, But when you look at those tests, how long the paragraphs are, it's just a disaster. So a lot of those standardized tests prevent students, especially minority students, from getting access to quality education, you know, at reputable schools and different things like that, where if they get the opportunity, even if they're a C student, if they get an opportunity to go to an HBCU or a PWI, a lot of them do very well. But those test scores are oftentimes used to screen them out. And after they don't do well on it a couple of times, then they just fall by the wayside. On the other side, you have somebody that's a good test taker. It doesn't mean they necessarily know the content. They just know how to take tests. Those of us that are good test takers, like I look for what I know is the wrong answer first, because then that helped me narrow it down on what I got to choose from. So we was talking earlier with Officer Nina, and I saw my police chief who's worked in like both areas on the line. And so if you don't mind, Madam President, can I put Chief Williams on the spot for a moment?
Chief Williams, he's got a question, so he right there.
Okay.
Okay. Ask your question first, Chief. We can't hear you. Sounds like you're muted.
You have on his fancy headphones.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I just wanted to weigh in on what Nina was saying. But be cognizant that I've also been in meetings with chiefs across Broward County that say, we don't care what they say. You can't tell me who to put. The contract says put an officer or a deputy. You're not going to tell me what deputy or officer. So understand that fight first. Also understand that you need to address it from both angles. I always had a problem with the school administrators not doing their part first before calling in the police. I think that happens a lot. I think an assistant principal doesn't want to be known as a disciplinary or whatever, call the police officer. Well, always remember, police officers got one solution. That's handcuffs. When it's something that could have been handled through the system, through the discipline system of the school district. So let's stay focused on both of those issues.
Thank you.
Don't think that it's just a police issue. The administrators get paid six figures too, and they need to do their jobs.
Agreed.
And that's, if I can piggyback on the ex-chief, he's absolutely correct, because the entire time, I think I was with the school system, maybe as a school resource officer, 14, 15 years. And that be the issue. The teachers want to call you, as they want to call the police, that go directly to the police. And then the administrators also call the police when there's discipline issues that should be handled internally. So, you know, and when we arrive, the police, most police are just going to take action. So they have to be trained and accountable. And I tried to do that at the beginning of the school year and set the record straight with the teachers, the entire faculty, staff, and so on and so forth. But every SRO does not do that. And when you call the police, and when they arrive, they are going to take police action.
Hence why we have promise. Go ahead, Doc. You had a question.
Yeah, and you know, Mr. Runcie just implemented a program where we're going through this whole school climate change for that reason. And school climate change starts with every entity, the teachers, the principals, to just teach them to look at our kids different. We did maybe 6 years of courageous conversations that help people better understand their implicit and explicit biases. And that's why we're beginning to get kickback about this critical race theory, because it teaches that racism is not something that's inherited, that it's learned through culture. So a lot of people in our schools, administrators, teachers, they're great people, but they have an element of fear when it comes to Black and brown kids, especially sometimes Black girls, because a lot of times as Black girls, we look a lot older than we are. I've been 5'11", 9.5 shoe since 6th grade. So I was always taller or bigger than most people in my class, but cognitively, I was still a 13-year-old child. So changing school climate allows you to take staff through trainings and expose them to concepts and information about themselves. A lot of this is about people that work in schools. Like you said, they don't want to be known as a disciplinarian. They're afraid to deal with the kids, so they call the police. You know, they don't want to do their jobs and dealing with the kids. You know, when I was in school, Mr. Dudley and Mr. Johnson them had this little thick paddle, you know, and sometimes it'll help you do some things that you needed to do. They ain't have to call your mama or none of them. They would, you know, apply that to you a few times, and you couldn't sit down for a couple of days, and your attitude and a lot of little stuff you was doing, it got right. We don't have those measures of discipline in the school now. So it becomes this argument as to whose responsibility it is to discipline the kids. And let me just say this for the person that's on this meeting tonight, that's gonna say parents. Data shows us that many of our kids now have their mother and father incarcerated for substance abuse issues. We know that incarceration does not provide mental health and supports that it needs when somebody has a substance abuse problem. But many of our kids are living with whoever will keep them for this 2 weeks or that 2 weeks. So we have to stop passing the buck and take some responsibility ourselves to help the children, no matter what our role is. I'm in school sometimes, and children, you know, they start using a little 4-letter words. And I say, you don't see me standing here? And the principal say, don't say none of them. I said, no, I'm gonna say something. If I have to, you know, I might do more than just say something, you know. It'll be worth me getting arrested for. And just sometimes just saying something like that, get them in check.
Yeah, I wanted to, we talked about, just briefly touched on that kid I saw on the news, and I'm very much bothered by it because I think his aunt, the family member that was regarding, was saying that the kid became suicidal, that he is, you know, really struggling. Now, I know we've lost too many kids over the last few years for a lot of reasons. And certainly gender identity, or people that are bullying, from that sort of thing. And I know that there's policies, there's governmental protections and reporting, and that is in place. But what does a parent do who is whose child is being bullied for whatever reason, but certainly because they are a member of the LGBT community? What should, and I've heard of another child at another school in a similar situation, and so that we don't lose another child. I mean, I don't know, is there anyone that you know of, or did the district offer resources? I know you're waiting, just find out, but if there are resources that could be offered to that family, or pointed in the direction of resources that could assist those families whose children are a victim of bullying, and for whatever the issue is.
So, Madam President, certainly under Mr. Rice's leadership, we have a whole department for our LGBTQI students and our staff. If a child is being bullied in a school, the first thing the parent needs to do is contact the principal and report it and make it an issue. The second thing they need to do is contact their school board member. Sometimes as a school board member, I might not be aware of something that's happening to someone's child in a school. Once I'm made aware of it, it empowers me to follow up and to get to the bottom of it. In my district, when we're not in COVID, I do something called Courageous Conversations, Hear My Cry. Representative DeBose and I started it in 2012 when I first got elected, because we wanted to create an environment for African-American kids that were from the LGBTQ community to have a safe space to talk. And we did the first one at the African-American Research Library. And from that, I go around to all my high schools during the year, and I have these talks where I bring the kids in, both kids that identify in that community and kids that don't. I start off in a big auditorium group, and then I break it down into small groups. And sometimes just getting the kids together so that the kids that are being bullied can tell the person on the football team or the person that's calling them ugly, calling them this name or that name, how it make them feel. And a lot of times the kids will say, well, it's not that serious for you to want to kill yourself. Say, well, yeah, when you say those things to me, I just want to kill myself. So a lot of it too is being hands-on with the kids. We have to own it. Many of us are uncomfortable with dealing with our LGBT community because in our minds, we want to make them different. We want to think that they don't deserve grace. So we have to be models of that. We have to love our children and embrace our children and interact with them and show others how to interact with them. Just because I'm different, it don't mean that you have a right to just say anything to me or treat me any kind of way. And I think a lot of times our kids do what they see us do. I remember when we started getting influx of Haitian people, people would say all kind of stupid stuff about them eating cats and all this kind of stuff. So the kids hear us say this stuff and then they start mimicking it. But we have a LGBTQ department at the school district. We recognize LGBTQ History Month. So we've created a culture in the district where kids can get help. But many of the families, the African-American families, we don't take advantage of it because we still don't want to address this issue of loving our kids. You know, the issue is us. It's not the children who have, you know, a different sexual orientation. It's us. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to love them. We don't want to support them. So when these things happen to them in school, a lot of times we shy away from it because they have our last name. So now if you go to the school and deal with this issue, somebody gonna know that it's your child or something like that. So I just think overall, even in our communities, we need to start having more conversations about loving and supporting our students. And when you bring them to the table, they will tell you just how you make them feel when you say and when you do certain things. But the district does have resources. First, go to the principal. Anything that's happening on a school campus that's not right, the principal is the site-based manager. Go to that principal. That principal will in turn do some type of internal investigation of getting those kids together. Also ask to see the other kids' parents. You know, when my kids was in school and people would go after them, I would say, I need to talk to these kids' mamas and daddies because you're my prized possession. And if somebody put their hand on you, and I had 3 of them, and I would tell them, if one of y'all fight, all y'all better be fighting. You know, but I'm going to go talk to those other parents as well so that they're aware of what's going on with their kids or their grandparents or whoever's responsible for them. But you have to work with the school district. You know, a lot of people like to call the news media. Well, the news media don't really have no power over the school district. You know, they can put something on the news, but you have to go to the principal and you have to make sure that the process is followed, where there's some mediation, where ultimately you're at a table with all that are involved, getting to the bottom of what's going on. It's the same thing with fights in school. We have a lot of fights in school. And at the end of it, you have 22 girls fighting and they can't tell you why they fighting. Somebody dissed me, but what do? They might say, well, I put 50 things on my Instagram page because most of us young people, we're on Instagram. We don't use Facebook anymore because there's too many old people over there. But I put 50 things on my Instagram and she didn't like anything on my Instagram page. So now I got an attitude. I'm going to go to school and fight her because I feel like she dissing me on Instagram. Well, if we're not engaging with our kids, we don't understand how this whole phenomenon of being an Instagram superstar is impacting them mentally because it gives this delusion of this imaginary audience. So if you ain't clicking like, now I'm interpreting it that you my enemy, you don't like me. So now we in lunch and we got an issue because you didn't like something on Instagram.
Well, let me ask you, I got a important, this is the second time I've heard this. I haven't seen this myself, but I heard that it does exist. The question is, what are the discipline measures of educators bullying a student? There is a viral video of a Dillard High School educator demeaning a student.
So there are policies in place at the district. If that person is reported and it's investigated, then there are certain steps by policy that takes place. it could lead to a suspension or termination. But a lot of times when you get a video, you need to be able to look at the whole video. You know, I've learned that since I've been in the district. You can have somebody give you, for example, there was a situation with a kid that was on the news, and it said that he was being bullied so bad that he had to go to the hospital. He couldn't stay in school. And I'm not going to call the school name. But when I got involved in it, what I found out is this kid and his 3 brothers would beat these other kids up at home in the pink apartments on the weekend. So when he with his brothers, he beating up these kids. So when he got on the bus by himself, you know what's gonna happen. Now you're not with your brothers. So I think if that video is out there and we have it, I'm sure we are investigating it and it'll get to the bottom of it, and that individual will go through the process of discipline that is according to policy, because it's unacceptable. You shouldn't be bullying a kid.
So what is step one? If this video exists, what is step one for that family?
So step one for that family is getting that video to the principal, their school board member, or the superintendent.
Or all of the above?
Right.
Okay.
Because it's hard with videos to lie. And we have cameras all throughout the school. So even though you see a part of a video, we have cameras and stuff on school campuses that we can go and look and see what's going on. And I can't get into, for safety reasons, I can't get into explicit details about that.
Sure. Okay, we are going to, and before I go, I want to, our general counsel is the Judge Alona Holmes. And so as we talk about moving forward with litigation, let me just tell you, she just itching. She just itching. Somebody, and if somebody got to be the first from our end, and we have a lot of stuff on the table. But I want to hear from Judge Holmes before you wrap up, Doc. Go right ahead, Judge.
All right. Good evening, and thank you, Madam President, and Dr. Osgood. As always, I've enjoyed your report on the school board, and what's going on. So far, I may have good news to report. The civil citation program, after about 120 days of pushing, may become a reality. We will be having some matters brought before the CAB at the next meeting. There was a administrative order that was sent to Judge Tudor. I was told it went Friday. I don't know if it's been signed. I have not seen the signed copy, but that's good news, because that was set into motion. Full effect of the civil citation program. We are scheduling a tour of the JAC, the Juvenile Assessment Center. We're trying to set that up for the next 2 weeks or so, to go and view where our children are taken, and where we can put them, when the officers make a mistake and mistakenly, inadvertently take them to jail when they should just get a citation, and the parents called to take them home. So we're working out the logistics, but I think that'll be a nice before Christmas gift. We'll have it up and running. Mr. Pryor is going to give a report of his efforts with law enforcement and memorandums of understanding. I think we have another meeting that's going to be set up, hopefully before the CAB meeting, but certainly thereafter, to make sure there are no loose ends. So that is certainly a win for the NAACP. And I thank you, Madam President, for keeping the pressure on. Just because you're new in office doesn't mean you can't do what you promised to do before you got in office. And the reason that you got in office is because you made promises. So I heard a good sermon on Sunday: promises made, promises kept. So he made those promises, and I firmly believe that we're going to have that up and running, if no later than the end of this month, or certainly by mid-June. So that's a good thing. I want to report that the Federal Judicial Nominating Commission met, and we interviewed over 2 days. And I want to say this: we had 2 brave young men from Broward County who put in applications for various positions. It became pretty evident to me that we don't know how to play the game. But you know what? I'm going to take some of that responsibility, And I'm going to be working with people from Broward. We need federal representation from this county. But what I will tell the NAACP is that we did put out a slate of names and sent them up to Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office. It's even though I certified the name, she has the prerogative under the rules to accept one, some, or none of the names that we put out. But I do want to say this to our own member, Chief Anthony Williams. I think he did a valiant job. But it's hard coming from the state system over into federal. But we're going to work on that. The NAACP has my word on that, to groom our people, because that's where the laws are really, really made. Federal judges rule, they have lifetime positions. The only way you get rid of them is they are impeached. So I believe that we are in good stead. I want to thank again Chief Williams, and we had a brother named Bruce Brown who applied for a judgeship. So we'll be talking more about that. And with regard to the Baker Act, Madam President, you gave me a project, and I've already started looking into that project as to why our children are being Baker Acted. But that is concomitant and hand in hand with what Mr. Weeks reported on about the mental health issues that are not being addressed in our children. And they're going to be worse. They're going to be more pronounced, because they're even saying adults are having problems because of the loneliness that was occasioned by the pandemic. So, we will be looking into that. Also, you gave me an announcement, and I'm very pleased. The NAACP has $80,000 in scholarship grant money. So anybody that has a child in STEM or STEM programs, please, you can contact.
I think you're muted, Judge.
See, the Lord didn't want y'all to have my personal email.
And I think it's 800, not
yes,
80.
It's 800. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Did I say 80? It's 800,000 for students, and it can be grad and undergrad. So if you have children or you know of children, contact the NAACP, the office, or you can contact me, and that's JudgeHolmesRET@gmail.com. That's JudgeHolmesRET@gmail.com. So I'm working on the Baker Act, Madam President. So keep the projects coming. We do have litigation going on for House Bill 1. That's the Anti-Riot Act and the Anti-Monument. I don't know how that's going to pass muster, because they put more than one subject in one bill. So, but you can't really count on the state Supreme Court, because they are very, very conservative. Also, I'm looking into bringing in local law firms. I talked to a gentleman just today from Berger Singerman, and Mitch Berger was Al Gore's lawyer during the recount here in Florida. They are very interested in getting involved with the voter suppression bill that came out of the Senate. And so I told him, I said, look, we don't have no money, but we can smile real good at you. And he says he is so interested in that. So I'm going to get him involved with that. And I am personally working on my admission to the U.S. Supreme Court. So I don't have to wait for the Legal Defense Fund per se to say we don't have enough lawyers on it. I'll go to court for the NAACP. So those are the things that we're working on, Madam President, and thank you very much.
Thank you. And I have one last question, and we're probably not going to be able to, but it is an issue for Dr. Osgood. Question is there data on how pre-expulsions of Broward County public students, I'm assuming are held? Will there be a new procedure of how investigations of pre-expulsions are handled? So we want to, and the other, it went away. That's it. Okay. Are handled to date, I believe Deborah Kearns, Assistant Director, investigates cases and recommends pre-expulsions. So they were asking for the data on that. I must say, I serve on, and I probably won't after Mr. Runcie leaves. I serve on the school board code of conduct and disciplinary matrix committee, and I have for probably about 5 years representing the superintendent. And I can say honestly that I have seen a change in Ms. Kearns that doesn't really work for me. We have had the staff on there used to be, I felt like, really pro children when it comes to really dealing with the needs and figuring out what's going on with the kid. I've not seen that. Probably this is year 2 on there. So I do agree that we should look at the data, Dr. Osgood, and that we should re-examine the process, because I used to feel relatively comfortable with that process. And you could always have a phone call and talk, but that is not what we're seeing lately. I'll just share that with you.
And thank you for sharing that with me. I wasn't aware of that, but that will be my homework and my takeaway assignment. And that's why it's so important to have these types of community forums and questions and answering, because the district is a big district and sometimes you're not aware of everything. But I certainly have made note of that, and I will work with you, Madam President, to look into that. It is my understanding that the pre-expulsions and those things come that we're really trying not to expel kids unless there's a law that say we have to. So we can look at the data and then we can come to some better conclusions from there and look at what we need to do with the process. And if I could just have a moment of personal privilege, many of our sororities and fraternities are very busy right now with scholarships and passing out scholarships to students and giving money. And I want to thank all of the members of the Panhellenic, the links that continue to do community service and raise money to send our children to school. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha that joined us tonight from Miami, West Palm Beach, to be present for this conversation with all of the other busy meetings and stuff that we oftentimes have going on simultaneously. But I can't say it enough how important those scholarships are for our kids, those dollars are for our kids. And as we go back to our different Greek sororities and fraternities, if we think about maybe having, just kind of one less party, sometimes we spend a couple of $1,000s on those parties, like $3,000 or $4,000. That's a good scholarship for one of my babies, one of your babies. So I'm just saying, just how we can level up, because it's going to be more important that we fund our kids. We cannot, as these systems, these games are being played with Bright Future and these other pots of money, we have to make sure that that does not prevent our children from getting the education that they need. And I believe, Judge Holmes, we serve a father that owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. So some of that money we have in our pockets. We just need to do something different with it. But thank you for your continued support. In closing, Attorney Weeks called me a couple of days ago, and he asked me for some students or some artwork. And he said that he had a lot of walls down in his building that he thought student artwork would look good on. And I know Judge Evans had a picture of some students up in his chamber. So if you're working in an organization or a building and you're just tired of looking at those same old walls, I have thousands and thousands of kids that have some great gifts when it comes to art. They can help you put something on those walls that'll inspire you and encourage you every day and help you to keep them on your mind. Thank you so much, Attorney Weeks, for just thinking of our kids and continuing to keep them at the forefront.
Okay, and let me just say before you sign up, let me say we have some of our judges. I don't want to leave because we had them before they got the robes and during, and so I want to say Judge Odom, say hello to the people.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Madam President, Judge Holmes, Dr. Osgood, and all those respected persons, Sister Edwards. Always a blessing and always informative. Just happy to be here, and please continue to keep up the fight, and anything that I can do, be of service. You all know how to reach me one way or the other. So just call me, and I will come running.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Cal Evans, our judge.
Good evening. Thank you for the information, and thank you for putting this on. This is more important now than it's ever been. And we've all seen what's going on. I'm gonna stay within the canons, Judge Holmes, so don't worry about that. But thank you for being my village, and I truly appreciate it. And I'm blessed to be able to serve you and represent the village that raised me. So thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Michael Robinson.
I want to thank you all for this very informative session. Thank you, Doctor. You preached very well. Sometimes I wish I didn't have this back row. I served as vice president under Roosevelt Walters many years ago. I loved in the NAACP. I always loved the NAACP, and you guys are dynamite. I appreciate you. I went to Lincoln Elementary and Sunland Park Elementary and Everglades, and I'm a proud Panther, Dillard High School. So sometimes, Dr. Osgood, you do need to paddle. Can't do that now, but sometimes, and it starts at home. Brother Lee, Judge Evans' father, had a big paddle, and he used it. So sometimes it works, and we wiser and smarter for it. Thank you, all of you, for showing up. But thank you, NAACP, for the great job you always done.
And tell the judge I said hello. I saw her on earlier. I also saw our magistrate on there, Rosalind Woods, as well. All right.
Madam President, I forgot to tell Dr. Osgood, I am a Walker Wildcat as well. So.
And Madam President, if I may, Judge Gillespie, I don't think he's on, but he wanted me to announce that he is now an official life member of the NAACP.
Okay, yes, that he is. That he is. Have you seen our other judge, Judge Williams? Did they make him go back in the courthouse? Just checking. Just checking. Nina Justice, you had something real quick? Your hand was, or was your hand up from before? You're muted.
Yes, Madam President, real quickly, thank you for allowing me to be on this, a part of this great NAACP organization. But I do want to say that right now, the city of Fort Lauderdale have 8 finalists for this chief position, and the city manager, he's reaching out, and with the programs that the Judge Holmes is talking about, and what Dr. Osgood is talking about, the civil citation program, and with all our students being greatly involved, with the chiefs that were in office after Frank Adderley, we got kind of like out of the loop as far as the NAACP having some input in the city of Fort Lauderdale. But with this city manager, Christopher, like June the 12th, I'm sorry, he's having an interview of all these 8 finalists, and he's going to narrow it down, I think, to 3. We have 3 people internally and 5 externally. I think that you all should certainly be a part of this as our community leaders, and have some sort of input and interview questions available for these applicants. Again, we were invited. When I say we, the Fort Lauderdale Black Police Officers Association, along with the FOP, but I think our community leaders, especially dealing with our children and the changes that has been made with the school board representatives and possibly losing Dr. Osgood, we need our input and our voices. And with this new chief, let them know the direction that Broward County is looking forward to, where we're going as far as the disciplining of our incarceration of our children, and make it known to Chris whether or not you approve this candidate.
Thank you, Nina. I did get the list on yesterday. I concur I can say I saw the the internal candidates. If we get either one of those, then we are in trouble. We're not going to be able to move forward. So they can't possibly be serious about moving forward, but we've got to say that to them. And I agree with you, and thank you for that. I was disappointed with the list that came out, but there is hope on there in the candidates that they did choose. So yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, madam.
And we'll definitely be in touch. Jasmine, Shirley, there was a couple of announcements you had to make. One regarding, I think, it's gonna have something on Juneteenth.
Yes, if everyone could put on their calendar, Juneteenth, June 19th, 9:30 a.m. at the Eula Johnson House, which is the NAACP office. We will be hosting at 9:30 a.m. until noon our Juneteenth event in honor of Harry and Harriet T. Moore, a voter education, voter registration, and voter status update opportunities, new membership recruitment, as well as food distribution. Our theme for the food distribution is food is medicine too. So we hope that everyone can come out at 9:30 on June 19th.
Thank you. Was there another event, or was that it? I think there was something else. I think that's it. And we will certainly put it out. We've widened all of our constant contact. We're constantly updating that for individuals and particularly members. We'll send out some additional information for scholarships and within your network, please get this money. If the child or the student is not an NAACP, they can join and then become eligible to apply. And based on it could be as little as 10 if they're depending on whether they're in high school or in college there. And so we want to make sure that this money is applied for. We don't, surprisingly enough, not a lot of students from Florida apply for these dollars each year. Each year I go to convention and I see the monies and the number of people that applied from Florida. So I know there's somebody out there that fits this criteria that can use some of that $800,000 so that they will, so they can go on to school. NAACP.org scholarships and go into education. It will be there. Are all hearts and minds clear? Okay.
Question, Madam President, could I ask that Judge Holmes give me a call concerning the issue before?
Yeah, do that offline. Yes, ma'am. I will text.
Okay.
I'll send her a text or resend the text you sent the other day. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Minister Edwards.
Let us go to the Lord in prayer. Gracious God, we are thankful for what our eyes have seen and our ears have heard on tonight. God, we thank you for the information that was shared by Dr. Osgood. The word tells us in all of our getting for us to get understanding. And now, Father, we pray that as we prepare to depart from this call, but never from your presence, that you would continue to be the wind beneath our wings. Father, we lift up those who are leading us and guiding us. Oh, Father, and we pray that you, Lord, would guide them. We ask you to grant traveling grace to Dr. Osgood upon her safe return home. Lord, we ask you to continue to bless the work of the NAACP. And Father, we pray that you would make us all aware of our responsibility to take care of our children. In the precious, majestic name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus the Christ, I pray. Amen.
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 Thank you, everybody. Come on home, Dr. Osgood. We waiting there. We got all this stuff we got going on. Come home. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Appreciate you.
everybody.
Take care.
Good night.
Love you, Madam President.
Love you more, sis.